Tired of fantasy literature that caters only to wine-ounts and activists? Tired of love triangles and unlikable girl bosses? Tired of propaganda disguised as entertainment? If so, check the Guilds of Avlaan series, a series like no other ever written in the Western market, with cute and funny female leads and dashing male protagonists. This series is full of adventure and exciting landscapes. Do not let others decide what you enjoy. Look for what you enjoy. If you are interested, the link is in the description.
Hello, Leonardo Cornejo here, and today I want to talk about an uncomfortable truth. Fan art is plagiarism. That's how I start the video. Before you start complaining about my looks, look, I haven't shaved. I know it's fucking cold here, and it's uncomfortable to shave with this cold. Back to what I was saying. Fan art is plagiarism. I know it's not something people want to hear, but it is true. Now, that doesn't mean everyone should be sued for plagiarism for making fan art. And in fact, that's the point of this video. That normally doesn't happen, normally it shouldn't happen. Fan art in general is a form of derivative work. That's why it's plagiarism. Derivative works are actually plagiarism. Not all countries treat intellectual property the same. There is this false notion. That's also why I oppose the abolition of intellectual property. There is this false notion that all countries have exactly the same laws for the same things. And when it comes to intellectual property, some countries are more flexible than others, and some are more strict than others. And then there's Japan. Japan is not precisely known for being merciful with derivative works. There are countries where derivative works are legally protected under laws such as fair use or parody laws. Japan, it's really difficult to be acknowledged as a parody, and there is no fair use. That's why Japan is so strict with derivative works, with intellectual property in general. That's why they are so aggressive with trademarks, with copyright, and with patents. It's related to why Nintendo is so abusive, by the way, with intellectual property. Now, I have already talked about what I think will fix the problem with intellectual property, including not allowing large corporations to own intellectual property, but rather giving the intellectual property to the creators within the company and having them keep it. Wait a second. Back to what I was saying. I think intellectual property shouldn't be in the hands of large corporations. But, and this is important, but since we haven't changed the law at the moment, well, we are in the situation where we need to talk about why fan art is plagiarism. The thing is, derivative projects, derivative works are plagiarism. All forms of derivative works, all forms of fan art, not only illustration, but for example, fanfics, fan manga, fan comics, fan games. This is important one because fan games are the most affected by this, and IP holders are the ones who decide whether you can profit from the work or not, whether you are allowed to even make it or not. Basically, we are the ones who decide what passes and what doesn't, and the creators of derivative works are at our mercy, to put it bluntly. Now, normally, and this is the important part, normally companies don't go against derivative works because it's counterproductive to them. Derivative works are often treated as free advertising. They are also used to measure the popularity of a product. That's why you, for example, don't see mangaka targeting fan illustration that often. They rarely do. Wait a second. Back to what I was saying. That's why you don't see creators targeting. Wait a second, this is important. Sorry, making sure my cat doesn't eat something he shouldn't eat. Anyway, back to what I was saying. The thing with fan projects and creators is that we normally don't go against fan projects because it's bad for us. It makes us look bad. It makes us lose audience, and it makes us lose advertising. When you see, for example, that a character is popular, you know that character will sell well. That's why fan illustrations are really favored by creators. But that's kind of the part where things start to get ugly. Because when you go to other forms of derivative works, there is less patience with them. For example, with fan games, fan films, fan comics, there can be some negative response from the creators. Generally speaking, mangaka are really patient and nice compared to other IP holders, and especially compared to large corporations. Disney, for example, will generally speaking try to destroy any fan project, especially if it is considered disparaging to them. For example, they went after several Star Wars fan projects, which were better objectively than their sequel trilogy. They go after fan illustrators who make suggestive or erotic content with their characters. They basically try to get rid of you if they don't like your derivative work. The thing is, generally, it is also a waste of money to start a legal case against someone over derivative works. So companies, what they do is they send cease and desist letters, basically saying, stop doing that. Stop making that fan project, or we are going to take legal action against you. Usually that's all they need to do to deter creators from making fan projects, and that's why basically they just do that instead of going for a legal case against someone who is making a derivative work. For example, there are other cases. For example, someone tried to make a fan sequel to Chrono Trigger and got a cease and desist letter from Square Enix. There is this case of My Little Pony Fighting is Magic, which was a My Little Pony fighting game, and it got a cease and desist letter, and they had to stop because it got too famous, and the IP holders Hasbro considered it damaging to the brand. Wait a second. And since Hasbro considered it damaging to the brand, they basically decided to send a cease and desist letter to the developers. That led to the creation of a game called Demon Fighting Hearts, which was basically using all the programming they have made for Fighting is Magic and replacing the characters and the setting for a new original project. And there are other examples. For example, Lego is very flexible with the licensing of Bionicle fan projects, and there was this project, Masks of Power, which was destroyed effectively by the developers and not by Lego, because suddenly Lego decided to rescind the licensing. That's another part. Some companies decide to openly offer licensing for fan projects. For example, Hololive does it, Lego does it with Bionicle. But if you don't respect their guidelines, or if they consider it bad for the brand, they can rescind the licensing. That's what happened with Masks of Power. There is no official communicate of why the licensing was rescinded, but it is very obvious. It was because of one of the developers who is an activist known online as the Domain, who is a very nasty person who engaged in harassment campaigns, who was part of the targeted harassment campaign against Cabrutus, and that's why it probably made Lego look bad, and they decided to rescind the license. The thing is, if you make the company look bad, if you damage the image of the company, or if you grow too big and they don't like it, your fan project is in danger. There is a good chance it might be cancelled, it might get a cease and desist letter, or that if you got a sort of licensing, it gets rescinded. And that's the thing. Fan artists basically live off of plagiarism. I don't have an issue with fan illustrations personally. I don't have an issue with fan projects, with derivative projects. I actually, as an IP holder, I kind of have my own licensing policy, which is basically anything goes as long as you are not profiting from it directly, as long as you don't paywall it. You can take commissions of my characters, it's a separate matter, because you are getting paid to make the work, but you can't paywall the result. That's basically my policy with the fan projects. You can't paywall the finished project. You can get money from other ways, but you can't paywall it. So basically, no, you can't make an illustration of Ruwa Patreon exclusive. I don't allow that. And if I consider it, and I have some flexibility with the paywalling part, if I consider the project to be good enough to be somewhat official, we can come to an agreement on how much money you are going to pay for the license, and you can paywall it then. Don't worry, I'm generous. I won't get heavy with the licensing. You can really. I want to arrive like what's his name, like this guy, Andrew Sapkowski, and get all angry if you made more money than I did with your project, which I gave you the license for. But for licensing, you will need to pay at least enough for me to make a profit out of it too. Or we can come to an agreement with royalties. I kind of like royalties enough because I kind of like royalties a bit more because I like passive income. So basically, yeah, we can come to a license agreement if you want to put a price on a derivative work based on my books, based on my characters. Of course, one of the rules is follow the canon, respect the canon, don't deviate from the canon, or you are getting a cease and desist letter. Because I don't have the patience or energy to start suing people, but I can pull a cease and desist letter. By the way, a cease and desist letter is basically the low cost, low aggression way to inform someone that they should stop a derivative work, because if they ignore, you can ignore a cease and desist letter. You can say, no, I'm continuing the project, I don't care if you give me a cease and desist letter, and the company can say, I'm suing you then, and I'm making you broke then. Or they can risk their brand and say, well, there is no way we can win this one, we give up. But seriously, that's risking the brand. That's damaging the brand. That's why when you get a cease and desist letter, the next step is that if you refuse to follow it, you will get legal action. You will get contacted by the lawyer saying you're fucked. And that's where Nintendo enters this field, because they basically destroy any sort of fan project they can. They will make sure no derivative work exists. They are very similar to Disney in that regard. They are very aggressive with derivative works. In general, large companies are more aggressive than individuals. If you look, for example, at the small authors, they tend to be more friendly to derivative works than large companies. That's why it looks like there is no problem, there is no plagiarism. Many creators, small and big, tolerate that you paywall derivative works of their coming from their creations. I don't, because I really hate this paywalling model through subscriptions, and because I think it is wrong to so blatantly profit from plagiarism. I do think it's plagiarism. I tolerate it, I approve of it in some contexts, but I really don't like the idea of basically plagiarizing for commercial purposes. That's why I don't like, for example, creators who sell prints of fan art. That's not their characters, but they are selling prints of fan art. For example, a very popular character, Renamon. He's a character with plenty of fan art. I don't approve of illustrators who basically sell prints of fan art of her. That's fucked up, man. You are making money without paying the creators. You are making money of a character you didn't create. That's fucked up, man. And many do it. It's basically socially acceptable plagiarism, and as I said, many creators tolerate it or accept it, even welcome it. I set boundaries because I'm tired of seeing these biases, and because with the whole discussion on the AI, it really bothers me to see illustrators who make exclusively fan art, exclusively derivative works, complaining about AI and saying AI is plagiarism when it is less plagiarism than what they do. If you had a scale of plagiarism, fan art would be about tracing and unless it is fan art, and above AI by several magnitudes, because it's directly plagiarism, because you are infringing on the intellectual property of someone else without even getting a license most of the time. And if you profit from it, that's where I have issues. I don't have issues with derivative works as long as they don't profit from them without licensing. If they get licensing, if for example they follow certain licensing guidelines and they get licensing from the creators, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. They are respecting the license. They are following the license agreement. But if they don't follow the license agreement and they profit from fan art, yeah, that's wrong. That's wrong. Also, an important part. The characters you own all are copyrighted by the Berne Convention. You own the characters. And this is why this is important, because this is another discussion which is tangentially related, but let me put it this way. If you are an illustrator or an artist of any kind, and you work on the characters of someone else, be it sculpting, be it animation, be it illustration, the IP holder is the owner. They can do with your character whatever they with your art whatever they want because they own the IP. That includes eliminating it. That includes using it for commercial purposes without your permission because they are the IP holders and you are plagiarizing. And this is an important one. This is an important one. Or if they commissioned you, they can do whatever they want with that commission because it's their characters. If it's someone else's characters and someone commissions you to work on them, yeah, that's where the IP holder is the one who is basically, you are basically both at the mercy of the IP holder. IP holders have basically all creators, all other creators at their mercy with derivative works, with commissions, etc. And that's something that happens, for example, with Hololive. The Hololive staff often doesn't commission the fan art. Sometimes they don't commission the art rather than fan art. Well, it is fan art and then it's semi-officialized because they use it or a part of it in thumbnails. and they don't necessarily commission it. Sometimes they do, but they don't always do. But they own the characters, so they basically can do whatever they want with it, because it's theirs, it's their brand. You are using it at their mercy. You are using it according to their guidelines. They are giving you the license according to their guidelines. That's the thing. Fan artists have grown a bit too arrogant and entitled in that regard, and I'm tired of it, to be honest. I think it's time they start recognizing that they are at the mercy of the IP holders. And also, IP holders shouldn't be abusive, and they should start recognizing that targeting decent fan artists who act in good faith, it's a dick move. It's a dick move in general. But that's why, basically, if you are using, for example, let's say, again, Renamon, and suddenly Bandai or Toei arrive and use your art, they own the character, dude. You're fucked. There are controversies about that. I think it was Nintendo was in a controversy about that. There are controversies about that, but the truth is, I'm going to side with Nintendo on that one. If it's fan art of their character, they own it. They own it because they are the owners of the IP. That was a controversy with Nintendo regarding, I think it was a trading card which used fan art. Well, Nintendo is the winning one there. The artist is the losing one because they own the characters. They own the IP. You are using it and they can do whatever they want with it. Because they are tolerating your fan art. They have decided to not sue you and instead to use it. Be thankful they decided to not take legal action against you instead. Legally, that's how it is, even if you don't like it. And I know this is something people don't like because they like to side with artists. And I don't know this is something people don't like because they want to side with their favorite fan artist. But the truth is, if we are IP holders, it's for a reason. We didn't do it for free. We are not doing it for free. We're doing it for business, unless specified otherwise. So yeah, that's how it is. Of course, there are some things that are unethical to some extent. For example, I think it's absolutely unethical to not even credit the illustrator if you start using their work for commercial purposes. Whole Life does credit the illustrators, even if they don't pay them. I think it's unethical to not build a good relationship with the people who make derivative works unless they are troublemakers, unless they are acting in bad faith. But if they are not acting in bad faith, I think it's unethical to not build a cordial relationship with them. But you need to face the truth. Fan art is plagiarism. IP holders are the ones who decide how it is used, and you are at our mercy. Of course, as I said, I think it's unethical when you act like Nintendo, when you act like Disney. In fact, while I think Nintendo is on the right legally in that regard of that illustration, morally they are wrong because they don't even credit the illustrator. And I think they should credit the illustrator, and I think they should at least pay some level of compensation. I don't know, I think ethically speaking, morally speaking, that there are better ways to do it, but it's their IP. They decide. They have the power to do it. Or to destroy the illustrator if they attempt to fight back. Simple as. I know it sounds bad, but it's the truth. The illustrators are at our mercy. All fan artists are at our mercy, not just illustrators. All fan artists are at our mercy. We can decide, even unilaterally, what is acceptable and what is not. By the way, another policy I have with fan art is don't use it for your retarded politics. Don't use it for your retarded politics. My characters should never be used for that. And if you find someone using them for that, report them for copyright infringement, because it is copyright infringement. I own the characters, they don't. And it's annoying because I have dealt with that. And that's the thing. You don't know when you will have to deal with that if you are a creator. And that's why I get on the side of the creators, of the original creators, not of the derivative works. By the way, another one. If your original character is from a derivative work, for example, Sonic OCs, which are the most common, it's not original. The IP is not yours. The setting is not yours. Sega can do whatever they want with you and with your characters. Be thankful they don't hate you. And that's the thing. Also, original creators don't get the respect we deserve, and fan artists get more protection than we do. And the truth is, fan artists are the one on the losing end. And I repeat, all fan artists, not just fan illustrators, because people think fan artists, they think artists and they think illustrators. No, I'm including music, I'm including fanfics, literature in general, fan comics, fan manga, erotic doujinshi. By the way, I'm really hoping someday I get to see one featuring Ruwa. I'm talking about all that stuff made by fans, fan games even, fan tabletop RPGs, like for example Fallout Equestria. I'm talking about all derivative works. Fan artists get more support than creators. Once again the camera crashed. Back to what I was saying. Fan artists get a lot more support than creators, and that's why I decided to make this video, because I have seen recently several cases of IP holders getting in trouble for basically exerting their rights, for using commissioned art for commercial purposes, and you have the artist saying, you didn't pay me for that. If you are charging extra for that, go fuck yourself, we will find someone else. Or for example, there was this case in which someone commissioned art of their this person, it was a guy, this guy commissioned the art of his character. It was a furry guy, commissioned the art of his character, and then decided to use Grok to animate it for fun, just because, oh, I like Grok, I like this new technology, it's funny to take my picture and animate it for a few seconds. And then the illustrator who made that started a harassment campaign because the fucking illustrator was an anti-AI idiot. And that's exactly what bothered me a lot. This guy was basically attacking the IP holder, because the character was his, because the guy made the mistake of tagging this illustrator, because the illustrator made the picture. And this guy basically wanted to show like, oh, I really love this picture, so I decided to animate it with Grok for fun. And the illustrator started harassing this guy, and it was like 1 or 2 weeks of harassment, which culminated in the illustrator getting exposed for tracing AI generated images. The illustrator in question, in case you ask, I think it was named Moddusky. Well, this fucker got caught tracing AI generated images after harassing someone for using Grok, which is an AI, Grok, to animate a commissioned piece. The client is the owner of the character. The client is the IP holder. The piece commissioned was of the client's character. That's an important part here. That's where I'm pointing at. The client is the author, is the IP holder, is the owner. He can do whatever he wants with your art. If you were commissioned, he can do whatever whatever he wants, and that started. That's where that's where this connects with what I am saying. That case started a massive trend among illustrators. That and another case, other few cases that connected with that. That started a trend among illustrators of making terms of service, and I will say it. If you as an illustrator have these crazy terms of service, I respect certain terms of service. But if you include, for example, you can't use the art commissioned for commercial use, or you need to pay extra fees for commercial use, out. I don't want to work with you. If you put a rule, for example, I don't know, you can't I don't draw heterosexual couples, out. I'm done with you. Basically, I don't want to be involved with people whose terms of service are bad for my business. That's important here. If your terms of service are bad for my business, I'm not doing business with you. I own the characters, I own the IP. In fact, that's why I made it clear in the video about closed species, about kobolds, that you are free to use kobolds whichever way you want. It's a I don't claim ownership of the species. I leave it open source. I am giving you open source Nanachi. Why aren't you using open source Nanachi? Why do you insist on using Nanachi? No, seriously. Seriously. Stop making Nanachi clones that are literally Nanachi, but with a hairpin. Please stop if you want to do it for commercial purposes, because if you do it for commercial purposes, Tsukushi could arrive with his legal team and say, I love your art and all, but legally you gotta stop. So I'm giving you a species that basically looks like open source Nanachi. I'm trying to help you avoid Tsukushi's legal team or any friction with your favorite creator. That's what the kobolds are for. They are open source Nanachi. They also count as open source Muggles in case Square Enix, which is more hostile, comes and says, "Oh, you are drawing these Muggles in the style of Final Fantasy XII. So nice! Your OC is so nice, I really like it, but you are getting sued!" No. Use my kobolds, they are the open source equivalent. I'm trying to help you. back to what I was saying and setting the jokes aside. I specified that the kobolds were not a closed species to make sure you don't have to worry about licensing. The characters individually, Galena and Atron, I own those characters. You can't use them without my license. But the species, you can use it. The setting is mine, the characters are mine. The species, however, you can use it whichever way you want. It's open source. It's not public domain. I won't declare it public domain. You at least acknowledge that I created that design. But it's open source. That's the thing. It's not public domain exactly. It's open source. You are free to use those kobolds as you please. That version of kobolds is better than the D&D one. I will say why, and it's because I'm not going to change the license. It's not for another reason, because we know, and this is important because it's related, we know Wizards of the Coast has tried to alter their licensing to make it harder to use the species they declared available for open use. I'm not doing that. I'm not. If I tell you it's open source, it's open source. I'm not changing the license. I'm not that kind of asshole. As I said, I am very forgiving and merciful with licensing. Because I'm the small guy. I know what it's like to be the small guy. But the thing is, and this is the important part, as I said, they can rescind the license. They can do whatever they want with the licensing, and that's the problem. For example, exactly that's the problem with the. I think it was open game license. I don't remember the name exactly, but Dungeons and Dragons basically tried to change the licensing because they can. Legally they can. Legally they can. There was backlash, fortunately, and I think they backtracked. There was backlash, but legally they can. And the backlash was justified because, as I said, legally doesn't mean I agree, doesn't mean I think morally they should, doesn't mean I think morally they can. And I don't think it's ethical. But legally, they can change the license. They can change the agreement whenever they feel like it. And that's part of the problem. But since I don't like that, I won't change the license agreement with regarding kobolds. That's why they are better. I don't have anything against the scale-covered kobolds, except that there is no historical justification for that. I don't really have anything against them, except that they are not fluffy because they are covered in scales. They can still be cute. I know they will still have a niche. But I'm offering you an alternative which will get you less in the sights of Wizards of the Coast. Again, I'm offering you an open source alternative for your fun, for your OCs, for your characters, for your setting. You can absolutely use those kobolds in your setting. The species, not the individual characters. I absolutely 100%, I am not licensing you the characters. The characters are mine. That's the important part. I protect the characters. I don't protect the species. I don't care about the species because it's an idea. But the characters, those are mine. And that's the point. I, as an IP holder, decide what I keep and what I offer you as an open license, what I allow you to use. You are at my mercy in that regard, in regards to my work. You are at the mercy of the IP holders, as I said. There are things that I think are wrong, there are things that I think are right, but it is time we take fan artists down a few pegs when they try to cross some lines. Lines such as commercial use of someone else's intellectual property, which it really bothers me, and especially when they are strictly against artificial intelligence. If they are one of those that say, "Oh no, we should be allowed more freedom. We should tolerate artificial intelligence. We should be more flexible with intellectual property." Yeah, you are consistent. I respect that. But if you are not consistent, I don't respect that. I think we should also be more strict with illustrators who try to claim rights over someone else's IP in general. And that includes, for example, illustrators who are commissioned by a VTuber, which is something that is causing a lot of trouble with VTubers, by the way, that they intend to use their models or whatever for commercial purposes, and then suddenly the illustrator arrives and says, "Oh, but I did not authorize you to use it for..." It's my character, dude. It's my character, and that's my point. It's not your character, it's not your IP, it's not your brand. You are using it on commission. You are being licensed. I rescind your license, and I use the art as whichever way I want. What I want is basically to not allow fan artists to abuse IP holders. I know it sounds crazy when you think of IP holders as the big guy, when you think of IP holders and think of Nintendo. Well, I'm more focused on the small guy, the small indie VTuber, the small game developer, the independent comic artist, the independent writer, myself, in that regard. The independent illustrator who created something, and then there is this douchebag trying to profit from it without permission. And then there is this douchebag demanding them to jump hoops because they use the art they commissioned as they please. I don't approve of that. I think it's time we recognize that IP holders are on the right here when it regards to a small guy. When they are not being abusive, when they are being reasonable, respect them. Respect us when we are being reasonable. Well, that's it for today. Have a good one.